Welcome back, and we're on to day 3 of 5 of the hardest SAT questions that I can find online. I think this one's pretty difficult. I think this one is more tricky than you'd see in a standard GCSE. Arguably, it's not beyond what you should understand, but it's definitely not something you would expect to see. Possibly in a further maths GCSE paper, but not in the standard one. Either way, pause the video, give it a go. I'll be back in a minute just to run through it. All right, so how did we do? So tricky question here on the face of it, but it's just showing understanding of what happens when you have an equation which is already factorized. So it says in the given equation, k is a positive constant. Well, I tend to always highlight things like that because that could be relevant. When you're doing square roots, it tells you need the positive and not the negative, or whichever way around the question might phrase. And then it says the product of the solutions. Now, it's interesting to use the word solutions here. In the UK, we tend to say the product of the roots, but same idea, is 154. What is the value of k? Well, of course, the whole point of this question is you need to understand when an equation is in factorized form, so in other words, a thing times a thing times a thing times a thing, what if it equals 0? Well, it must be the case that either this first bracket equals 0 or the second bracket equals 0, etc., etc. So I know if I just rewrite the same thing below, the 3/5 doesn't matter. And I know the roots to this equation, again, the solutions in the way the question's phrased, is from the first bracket, I get minus 11 over 5. From the second bracket, I get minus root 5k plus 10. And on the third bracket, I get positive root 5k plus 10. So again, these are the solutions to the individual brackets. So therefore, they are also the roots to the equation when the equation equals 0. Or that's what the definition of a root is. And then the question says, if I multiply these three things together, so I'm going to multiply them all together, I get the value of 154. Now, of course, what's really nice here is I'm multiplying a square root by the same thing square rooted. So the square root's going to go away, and that's just going to leave with 11 over 5 times 5k plus 10 equals 154. And that's a pretty straightforward linear equation. So multiply both sides by 5, divide by 11, because that will simplify down to 5k plus 10 equals 70. Take away 10 from both sides, divide by 5, and you get k is equal to 12. Nice little question. There is another way of doing it. So actually, if you do further maths in the UK, we talk about the idea of product of roots. Now, actually, it's the same idea. It's just using a slightly different set of terminology. But let's run through that quickly. So the other way of doing it is I could say, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand the second two brackets, because that's going to give me this here. Again, difference of two squares makes that quite easy to expand. Then I'm going to expand the three brackets, which is going to give me that as medium working, and end up with this thing here. Now, again, I'm not suggesting this is quicker. It's not quicker. It's just a nice, different way of thinking about the same question. And then again, in further maths A level, what we talk about is we talk about the product of roots. So in general, if I think of a cubic, ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d equals 0, I know the product of the roots is going to be the d term divided by the a term with a negative. Now, I haven't explained at all where that comes from. And so, again, I'm just demonstrating something you can use. Either way, I know that 154 is equal to the d term, which is 55k plus 10, negative, so negative negative is a plus, and then divide that by the a term, which is 5, and I've got another equation, which if I solve that equation, I again get k equals 12. Like I say, not a quicker method in this sense, but just nice to know there are different ways of doing the same question. Either way, hopefully you got to the right answer. Nice question. Tomorrow's question is slightly trickier, so come back for tomorrow's question. But as ever, like the video, do add any comments you may have, and subscribe to the channel. This channel is slowly growing. Let's let it grow. Let's let it grow quicker. Thanks all. Bye.